Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I've done a GTD or getting things done type video where I actually explain how I use it on my day-to-day planning, and I've been getting quite a few questions through my Instagram on how I actually implement it. So I thought I would properly share it with you today in a video. For you, those of you guys who don't know what GTD is, it's basically a productivity method that was developed by David Allen, and I will link the video up here kind of giving you guys an overview of what GTD is for those of you who really have no background. It's really an amazing productivity system that I have been using for a little while, and it's really helped me get organized. So for those of you guys who are interested in the book, I'll link it down below. I listened to the audiobook because it was basically free through Audible. So I'll link that down below. If you guys are new to Audible, you can listen to it for free basically. Anyway, so check down below. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I will start with the main lists. And for those of you guys who are stumbling on this video for the first time or my channel for the first time, you might not be familiar. These are just some inserts that I had created in my shop. But again, you don't need these exact inserts. Just take away how I use it and the system, and you can use that and apply it in your own planning. You don't need the actual inserts like this, right? They're easy enough just to like write down the title. It's not about the insert, it's about the system. So, okay, so I've gotten a lot of questions about, I started with these lists, the main lists that we've discussed in that previous video that I linked, but basically the inbox where I've brain dumped everything. And I will just take you in a little bit further so that you guys can see. So I've brain dumped everything into my inbox. I have categorized them into the various sections that David Allen talks about. So if it's something that is related to my calendar, aka it's time or day specific, if it's something that I am going to do the next action on, aka something that's waiting, or basically this is what I think of as my actual current tasks. And then something that I'm waiting on, either from someone else or just I'm waiting for a piece of the puzzle before I can continue to work on it. Projects, which is something that has more than one step. So everything that's a one-step task went into my next actions. Everything that has more than, he describes it as 2 tasks. I mean, I don't always use it like that because then I would have like literally 800 tasks. But, you know, in general, something that's has a few steps, I guess I would say, I would put into projects, and then someday maybe, aka something I may or may not do after I've brain dumped it, I've decided that, okay, wait a minute, I'm actually not going to do that anytime soon. I'll categorize it there. And then I added this section, reference, as well, because sometimes there are items that is just going to be a reference item, right? It's kind of like a collection if you guys follow like bullet journal method. Anyways, it's basically just long-term lists, an easier way to put it. So after I've moved it into these sections, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating anything that you guys already know, but I just want to kind of start from the basics for those of you who don't know. Yeah, so next actions, this is what I would refer to on a more regular basis, because these are the things that I know I can perform something on. I know I can get started on. It's just a one-step task. The waiting on, like I said, so I've put in here, like I've transferred over. Okay, so I'm waiting on photos that I had gotten printed, so I'm waiting for them to call me so I can go pick it up. I'm waiting for an online order. Sometimes I put my online orders here, and sometimes I just track it separately because I have so many online orders. You guys know what I mean, right? Can't remember where I put it, but like sometimes I just do it in a separate list as well. This looks cleared out because I recently moved into a personal size, but usually as it accumulates, like it gets pretty long, and that's why I did that. That's my waiting on. And then any projects that I plan to do. This is some stuff from my shop, like build a website, get an authorized printer, all that type of stuff. This is some project details. This is some items that are like someday maybe items that I've decided, you know, I had the idea, I don't want to lose the idea, but I know I won't action it in the immediate future. I keep there. And then that's about it. So it's it's easy, it's relatively easy to make this list. And this is a very, very important step in terms of unloading everything and capturing everything in your mind. I can't remember who said the quote, but it was something along the lines of like, your brain is not meant for storage, just meant for actually like thinking and coming up with ideas. And that really resonated with me, because when I do have like a lot of ideas floating in my mind, I like feel almost like information overload and I can't actually think or do anything because I'm so busy thinking about what I'm forgetting. So that's been really helpful, like to the point where I feel like sometimes like when it's like a mundane task or a mundane item, I can't even remember it because I know I've written it down. So I've fully offloaded it out of my mind. I don't know if that's a good thing, but anyway, so it works. Okay, so how do I take this and implement it into the daily planning, right? So that's where we'll go from here. And I think the best way maybe for me to do this is to actually do the plan with you guys. So what I like to do is, you guys know or may not know, but I do both weekly and daily planning. So I do my weekly planning at the beginning of the week, so usually on Sunday to plan out for what's going on this week. And I also like to do daily planning like the night before. I talk about it in this video on why I started daily planning, but essentially it's basically I just felt like I was forgetting things when I only did a weekly plan, and I wasn't as diligent about looking at my planner because I thought I knew what was going on during the week, but I felt like I was missing a lot of things. Okay, so what I do is these inserts, again, I feel bad about mentioning it, but these are for my shop, and people have asked like, how do I incorporate this with the list? That's why I'm referencing them. But again, take from this video like the system of how I use it and not necessarily like what insert it is. If you are interested in the inserts, I'll link them down below, but not as important, okay? So the first thing that I like to do is, obviously it's the blank week that I'm going to be looking at, and in this insert, so let me zoom you in, oops. So on this insert, I have over here like my inbox, my next actions, my waiting on, and my projects. And what I like to do here at the beginning of the week is, the first thing that I kind of do is go through my last week's inserts. And I will go through and look for any open items that I haven't completed that week. So I think I actually was pretty good last week and completed almost everything. So I'm not sure if there's anything that I'll carry over from here, but I'll just go through, and everything that I did get, I'll just go and make sure I check it off. I called, got all of this stuff. Okay. So as I'm going through, I'm noticing that I have cleared out pretty much everything. So then let me show you an example of like a busier week where I have a lot of tasks. So this was the week prior to that, and I had a whole bunch of tasks. And what I will do is, the ones where I know that I will complete it the next week, or I've assigned it to a day in the future, I will put this forward facing arrow. It's almost like the migration system in bullet journal, for those of you who might be familiar. But basically I'm just showing that I have moved it forward because I will plan on doing that next week or later that week or whatever. It means it's carried forward. Now, if there was something on here that I've decided, oh, hey, I didn't do it this week and I'm not going to do it in my next week, what I will do is give it a backwards arrow. And that backwards arrow just means that I've migrated it backwards back into these lists that we just talked about. Okay, so that means I've added it back on this list. And that's just because I don't want to basically like have this mundane task of rewriting it every week. Like, it's just not a good use of time, right? Like, you know you're not going to do it, don't assign it to the following week, because you're just going to keep rewriting it, and there's no point to doing that. We're trying to be efficient. So yeah, so I always do that and make sure that every single box has some sort of tick mark, whether it's I've checked it off because I've completed it, I've migrated it forward to the new week that I'm planning, or I've migrated it backwards to my GTD master lists to do for a future week. Now, I do use multiple planner sizes. Like I have my personal size, but I also do use a pocket size for my dailies. And the reason I do that is because I don't like to be flipping back and forth. I also don't like to take out the weekly insert and put it up on top and then plan in the dailies, because then I got to flip back and put the weeklies back in. And I know it's not really a big deal, but maybe I'm just like trying to come up with excuses to use more planners, but whatever the reason, I like to use a separate planner for my dailies, okay? You guys don't need to do that. Yes, so where was I going with that? Okay, so now you kind of know what I do with the open items for the week. That's the first step that I do as I'm planning a new week, is double check that I've covered everything from the previous week. So then what I go in to do is I go back to the list, and then I scroll through and I usually go to my next actions. I do take a quick look at my inbox, but typically I do my next actions because especially if I've already sorted into the following list, I know that my next actions are the tasks and items where it's a one-step task and I can do it right away, right? Because I've broken down what I need to do into, I guess, distinguishable or like just the task at hand. It's not like research, I don't know, how to make planner inserts, right? Like that is a project, because it's not like I can just go online and research everything at once. It takes multiple steps, right? I have to go and figure out like, what are planner inserts? What are the sizes of planner inserts? What program are you supposed to use? Etc., etc., etc. You know what I mean, right? So I go into my next actions and I just go through and see if there's anything that I want to bring over to my next actions list here. And if I know there's something that I want to work on, so for example, what can I move over here? Let's see. So maybe like I wanted to create a bullet journal bundle. So what I would do is, I know that I'm going to create it this week, so I'll just put Bujo bundle here as something that I'll want to work on this week. You'll notice that I don't write the full list here because, again, I don't want to carry things over and over. I only want to put in what I actually think I'll work on this week, right? So I've put in Bujo in my next actions. Then I go into, like, obviously you can have more than one item just to keep this short and to keep on point. Then what I would do is go into the waiting on. Typically this list is quite long. And what I would do is, if there's anything that I think I'm supposed to be getting this week, I will go in here and write it down. Oh, actually, I just thought of something else that I am waiting on. Let's just pretend that it was here. But basically, I'm waiting for a response from my company's HR team on a question that I had. And so what I would do is then I would take that. Sorry, I totally lost my page. I take that and I move it over into my waiting on list. So I'll put HR response. And I'll just write that there. Then again, same concept in the projects. I will go in here and check out if there's anything in my projects. I'm not really working actively on a project right now, to be honest. But what I would do is in my project section, so I actually keep my existing project that I'm trying to work on currently in my pocket planner. What I would go in, I would look at the details of my project and see what's my next action item, right? So my next thing was like look into Shopify or look into the hosting sites, right? So then I would go in here and I put the next step. Notice that I don't just go in and like, I don't put create website here, right? Like that's not an actionable step. That's not one actionable step. And it's also not something I'm going to get done in 1 week, right? That's why you need to make sure that you've broken it down into manageable one task steps into your next actions. Either put in your next actions or put it in like a separate projects, area, I guess. I'll link all these inserts down below, but this is just like my project planner. And so here I've broken down what my action lists are. What are the specific items that I need to do in order to complete building a website? So yeah, I would take that and I would go in here and I would list it there. And normally, like, I mean, I usually choose like, depending on how big the task is, like if it's easy task, I could easily fill up this whole schedule, right? So I like to put that there, and then I kind of leave the inbox open because technically everything that's in the inbox I've already shifted and moved into its separate own sections. So sometimes what I put in the inbox is throughout the week, if I get something that I think I'll need to move back to my inbox, I add it here. Yeah, so that's really how I plan the GTD part in a weekly setup. Again, take from this the process. The process is really just checking, the act of checking your GTD master lists and assigning and making sure you work on those tasks and actually checking those lists, right? That's what I find helpful about, like, if you're doing your weekly planning or daily planning, have reminders. So like put, you know, a title. If it helps to put the title next actions waiting on project, because then it reminds you to go back to your master list and actually look at what you wrote down. Like half the battle is writing it all down, but then the other half is like actually doing it, right? So you got to make sure you go in and actually revisit it and assign it to yourself to get it done. So that's what I do in the weekly session. And again, if you are mainly just a weekly planner, this could be enough for you, just writing down all of your tasks, right? And then you would go about your day and do your planning. And then at the end of the week, you would do the same thing that I just talked to you about, which is either migrating your tasks that happen during that week forward into the next week, or migrating it back if you don't think you're going to work on it. It's the same thing with these items. If you've assigned these to yourself, but you didn't, say you were waiting for a package and you didn't get that package, just assign it. Well, you don't need to assign these back because you haven't checked it off your master list, right? But if you did receive it, go back to your list and check it off here as well. Right? If you haven't done it, you don't need to migrate these back because these came from your list. But the tasks in your weeklies that were assigned during that week that you didn't complete, you would need to migrate backwards or migrate forward. Does that make sense, guys? I hope so. Okay. So then the other thing that I do, again, this is part of daily planning. It's basically the same thing, kind of redundant, but for those of us who are kind of crazy and just want to plan in 8,000 planners, maybe you guys like to do this too. So in my dailies on my pocket, and you know, to be honest, it really does help. It sounds a bit redundant, but it does help me to do the dailies because it gives me an idea the next day of, you know, what's going on during the day because I just revisited the night before. Also at nighttime, sometimes it jogs my memory. Oh wait, I actually have this to do tomorrow or whatever, right? If you don't sit down to have that time to think, you forget it and you don't think you have anything. Okay, so then in my dailies, so this is the GTD monthly, weekly, daily bundle. Again, I'll link everything down below. The difference between these two bundles, for those of you who are wondering, is this one focuses on weekly planning. So for this one, it comes with the weekly like this, and it comes with a half daily insert as well as a collections insert for your like long-term lists and stuff. And this one is more so a monthly and daily focus, whereas the weeks is really just this little flap. And maybe you can understand why I have both of them now, because I am big on daily planning and I'm big on weekly planning. And I don't think you really need to do both, or most people I feel like maybe don't do both, and that's why I didn't put the two bundles together, if that makes sense. Again, you could just use any kind of weekly planner. Like you could use the Filofax, you know, those simple ones that come with the planner. Like use this for your planning. You don't need anything special. I just want to explain that for those of you who did have questions on that. So what I do in the dailies is the night before, it's really the same concept, but in my dailies here, I've made a list as well on the next action items for that week, as well as what I'm waiting on. Again, is it redundant to have it in both places? Yes, kind of. So these dailies I've been using consistently now for a little while. So most times I put all of the actions, the next actions that I've migrated from my list into here because I like to just have it on hand to look at, as well as the waiting on items. And then in the back of this section, I have a weekly review area where I also can list like inbox items that I need to move. Or like weekly tasks that happen that week that's going to be sitting in my inbox, or kind of the same thing like, you know, projects that I've wanted to move into this area, or maybe someday maybe items that I either wanted to migrate from my master list or I'm migrating to my someday master list, or some reference items that I wanted to note. Okay, so that's how that looks from a GTD perspective in these dailies. So, are these always filled out? No. Do you need to migrate it here first and then migrate it to the back? No. You can just migrate it directly, you know, from here into the back at the end of the week. It just depends on how you plan. Why I sometimes put it back here is, say I think of something at the beginning of the week and I think that maybe I will do it later on this week, I might move it here. But for the most part, if it is something major, I know I won't work on it this week, I know it's going to be a future thing, I just migrate it back to my master list. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay, and also for those of you who don't have those master lists and just want to use the monthly, weekly, and dailies or something like this, you can also use these as your master lists almost, as long as they're not accumulating like really long, right? Because there's not that much space. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know down below. Okay, so in the daily, how a daily plan, this is kind of crisscrossing over into my other video, but whatever. Basically, I go in, before I start the day, the night before, and before I start the day and start planning for the day, what I do is I go in and I look at my weekly to see what I have for the next day. Then I also go into the previous day and I move whatever I didn't do over to here if I think that I'm going to be able to do it on that day. I typically don't migrate anything to my master list at that point from a day-to-day perspective, just because like I usually feel like I'll complete it for the rest of the week and I just don't check my master list that often, to be 100% honest with you. It's something about the flipping back and forth. I don't like to flip back and forth. You know what I mean? Yeah, so in here, I just plan for the day, and then again, the same thing, I'll look at my next action lists for that week and see if there's anything I can do during that day. I like to have it here, and sometimes like people don't like to migrate it. You can totally just look it off this flap and cross it off. I, for some reason, sometimes like to schedule my tasks into a time slot. It's kind of like time blocking a little bit and just makes me like get on top of doing that a little bit more, like actually getting down to the task. So that's why I like to do that. And then at the end of the day, I go through the day and I just make sure I crossed off whatever that I completed during the day. Now, for items that I haven't finished, at the end of the week, I will go through and check all the dailies for the week, as well as check what's on my flaps for that week's next action list. And again, I'll migrate it forward into my next week, or I'll migrate it backwards into my master lists. And that's kind of how I use the two. Do you need to do both? No, you definitely don't need to do both. But let me know down below if you guys do both and how you guys navigate around that in terms of like, do you write things twice? Do you only do it separately? I don't know. I think I use this more as like a pre-planner at the beginning of the week type thing. And things always change day to day, right? And that's why I found that I also needed the daily planner, because it was changing so rapidly. I don't know. I'm kind of just blabbing on now, but let me know what you guys think about that. I love hearing about people's systems. So you guys let me know down below what your system is. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, next week I think I'm going to talk about bullet journaling, because I know that's another system, that very popular system that people use. So if you guys are interested in watching that video, consider subscribing to my channel as well as hitting that notification box so when the video comes up, you guys will be notified and can watch it. And I will probably also do a GTD versus bullet journal comparison. For those of you who are interested, let me know down in the comments if you would like to see those videos. And thanks again for watching. See you next time. Bye.